This is IBM Museum, and I've been getting some pinouts of the Twin X Hydras that you see behind me on the bench here. I'm zoomed in really close. I did go through and I took some pictures, and there's pictures online, but I'll probably just go over on video just to kind of show the connections and kind of give a little bit of description of these connectors and where the pins are, what they're labeled as, and I can include that in the video description as well as any pages that I do reference. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get turned around. I do have it on my on a webcam here. Same thing. I mean, I've got that in front of the bench as well, just to show that 4-port connection in the foreground. I've got the in the anti-static wrap, I've got that Twin X connector for the 5494, and then in the background I've got that 8-port, and I even have the plastic holder for that 8-port adapter that holds that to like the wall for a mounting of it. But I think the camcorder is going to be the better view, although I can switch that around however it needs to be, and I think I can hold stuff up to the camera if it needs to be. And the first Hydra that I worked on is this 4-port Hydra. And this is marked as the FRU part number of 72X5645. And these are still relatively available online. I've seen them from anywhere within the U.S. about $30 to $45 to get them shipped to a U.S. address. And of course, there's the outlandish prices, the pirate places out there that just show, they don't even show a picture a lot of time. They just give a description and ask an outlandish price. They're just looking upon to take someone as prey that's looking for a particular cable. And we'll talk about that aspect with what's visible here as well. And I'm trying to think how long this cable is. This might be like a 10-foot cable, I think is what I've seen advertised. And you can see the embossed numbering on the ports here, or to identify the ports. And we'll talk about that aspect in a moment. And then it's got this 9-pin connector on the other end, and I'll go through and I'll actually describe a little bit of this effectively. And it's got the embossed IBM on this connection, and so it's probably a little bit of a challenge to see the numbers inside of there. But it's from the upper left, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that 5th pin is missing. And then on the lower row from left to right, the 6, 7, 8, and 9. And that's going to be a little bit critical for identifying the way that this is set up. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to hold the Twin X Hydra here, and we'll go to what ultimately is port 0 on this end, but primarily with that keyway in the lower place on the bottom, where the slot of that cable connection comes in, and we've got, since it's Twin X, conductor on the left and a conductor on the right. And in fact, I think I can show just the end of the cable. And sometimes you see these cable ends. You'll see a particular color coding with one connection looking kind of like a silvery color and one looking a gold. I'm going to go through and reference basically the phase setup of how this twin axe connector is for this orientation. And over on the right, the conductor for on the right hand side is ultimately for phase A, and on the left it is phase B. So as long as we get that idea of the phase A and phase B, we've got the effective pinouts of that twin X connector figured out, and that's as it shows. Basically, it's stated as being on the equipment, and that's from IBM. Okay, we'll set that down for a moment. I'll bring up the twin X card here in a moment. I can also go through and bring up some information on the screen. So that 4-port Hydra is for, primarily I'm doing it from the aspect of the 5494, where there's that local twin axe adapter, or I've heard it called the twin axial workstation connector. And I do have one on the bench here, and I'll go through and describe. I'll bring it out of the anti-static wrap and kind of go through and display that. I shouldn't have to adjust the zoom factor of the camcorder or anything like that. But here's the adapter that I have a spare, and we're talking about ultimately this connector here, the 9-pin. And the 4-port Hydra, it is used also on the the 9406 170 AS400 like I have. I'm sure a lot of the other I-series systems in addition to the 5494. But I kind of wanted to show the aspect of the 5494, because really this 4-port connector is going to help us get the pinout for this 9-pin. You can see all the diodes and everything else it goes through to connect it into the interface on the adapter. And this is for the communications cable, and I'll go through the pinouts. I'm still waiting to see if I can get some cables, and for the different connection types so that that the communications adapter is able to support. You just swapped out the cable. The adapter is able to do and be able to be set up for the configuration of whatever communication protocol that you're doing. And so I'll go over that at a later point on the video. Now, it is interesting that normally the 5494s have one of these adapters, and they typically have it in that of the 4 slots they can have, the 4 microchannel slots they can have on that planar that's in there. They'll normally have this in slot 1. And there are instances where a second adapter can be in the 5494. And in that case, when the additional adapter is put in like the slot 2, the lowest numbered slot is the primary adapter. And it would have that, the reason for doing that would be for another one of these 4-port twin X connectors to go through and add another 4 channels where you could even go through and chain terminals or 5250 emulation on computers that you were doing. to go through the printers, the 5250 class printers that could be connected up to that. You're just doubling basically the number of connections. And with that, the AS4, the 5494 is able to go up to 56 stations, basically printers, terminals, 5250 emulation sessions, up to that number of devices. And the second adapter, that communications port, is unused in that instance. It's only able to run one of these. So the communications cable connection from that primary adapter, and that again being in the lowest ordered slot. But you'd have the secondary adapter in the slot 2 or slot 3 or slot 4. A lot of time with the 5494, it did have an Ethernet or token ring board that would be in there as well for connections in different ways. And there's 5494 manuals that really cover the planning and installation, go through a lot of diagrams and show the setup of this. Now, when this 4-port Hydra is connected to the secondary adapter, you'd notice that, hey, it's no longer in the numbering. That would be different from the 0 through 3 ports. You would normally have 4 through 7. And indeed, there was a Hydra that IBM sold, and it's actually the FRU of 03F0386 was the FRU part number of that adapter. And in reality, all it did was have these embossed numbers as 4 through 7. So 4, 5, 6, and 7 instead of the 0 through 3. And I have an image from online, and I did even see a higher cost one as well. This is actually fairly humorous in a way, because that's that part number, that FRU part number, and it identifies as an IBM 4-port twin-ax box cable. It doesn't show the adapter, the Hydra on that page. It goes through and just shows like a twin-ax cable, but this is the FRU part number for that. And the other one I saw was over $1,000. It was like $1,025, and that might, who knows if they're going through and they're dynamically adjusting that. They're saying that it's available. You could go through and you could order this thing for close to $1,000, either a little bit over, a little bit under, based on a couple pages I saw. And I haven't seen it really be so common on places like eBay or something like that. It probably wasn't made as much because IBM didn't go into the configuration to have that second adapter in place necessarily so much. But you could go through and you could make your own version just by relabeling over the top of those port numbers on this 4-port adapter. You could go through and just stick something or whatever, just relabel it to avoid any confusion, or just remember that you had this when you had this attached to that second adapter, it was the higher order ports that you had connected to your 5494. And I think the AS400s, at least the 9406 170 that I have, has only one of these that is normally connected to the system, and then that's why you have instances where the twin-ax was bridged out a little bit more, maybe a local 5494 to give it more connections or something like that. But these chains, they're able to do off of these channels. You're able to go through and chain the twin-ax workstations, the terminals, printers, and things like that as well. So in the pinout that I was doing, and again, with the pin numbering of the pin number 1 being in the upper left-hand corner of this connection, that is actually the B phase of the Twin-X port 0. So if I could get kind of an alignment, I guess, to show pin 1 effectively goes into this connection here for port 0. Yeah, it's identified on the other side. And then this conductor here is actually for the phase A. So it's phase A on this side, phase B on this side, and that's pin 1 and 2 of that 9-pin connector. Then we get to port 1, and this again is the phase B for pin 3, and then pin 4 being the phase A of the number 1 port. Pin 5 is removed from the 9-pin connector, so we go down to pin 6 in this instance, and that being on the lower left of it, going left to right, 6, 7, 8, 9. And so pin 6 is at phase B of port 2, and then pin 7 is the phase A for port 2. Pin 8 goes to the phase B of port 3, and pin 9 is the phase A for port 3. Now that 03F0386 Hydra, it's the same sort of arrangement that you go through for pin 1 being to phase B of effectively port 4, being that would be 4, 5, 6, 7. But it falls in that same arrangement for that. So that's just kind of the quick and dirty pinout. I know that needs to be written down, and we'll get to probably on the page for the Twin-X board of labeling and identifying the pinout for that, of how that Hydra plugs in. And that'd be an instance of somebody just has to go through and make their own or something like that. Now, and I don't believe that there's any termination or any aspect here. It's just this is a hermetically sealed block with the conductors. So that's a good layout of that 4-port Hydra. And with the 8-port Hydra, and this is really common. I have 9404 AS 400s, and they've got this 8-port block, and it goes to a 25-pin connector, pretty much of the same way, and it's very similar in the pin numbering. I'll go over that in just a moment. And as I have for one of these, it's just basically to be able to hang that on the wall and go through to where that's a easy way to fix it down. Now there are other Hydras that they had for that 9404 AS400 level that have even RS-232 connections and things like that. I'll get into that aspect, and I plan to pull out my my 9404 AS400s at a later point. So we have the same arrangement of port 0, 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6, 7. And this is so this would be effectively just like two 4-port Hydras put together. Now for the pinout of that 25-pin connector, and again we're going from the upper left is pin 1, which is ultimately missing here. And then we continue left to right on that top row of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And then 10, 11, 12, and 13 are missing from that top row. We continue down to the lower left. That lower left pin, or the second row down, it starts out at pin 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. And then pins 22, 23, 24, and 25 are vacant. And so you can really see these Amphenol connectors. I mean, they do have the pins numbered well enough, and the camcorder seems like it's pulling them up pretty good in that ring light aspect. Now with this one, since there's no pin in that pin 1 is vacated, pin 2 is actually the phase B of port 0. So it's down here, and effectively with this kind of reversed, as it were, the phase B would be effectively on this side from the diagrams I have. And then it's not like pin 3 doesn't go through and it's not assigned to port 0. Pin 3 actually does the phase B for port 1. Pin 4 goes through and is the phase B for port 2. So all along that upper row, they just go through. It's the phase B for ports 0 through 7 on that top row. Left to right, just that 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then the bottom row is the phase A side. So going down to pin 14, that is the phase A for port 0. Pin 15 is the phase A for port 1. 16 is pin 16 is the phase A of port 2, and so on and so forth, all the way up to port 7, left to right. And so that's kind of the quick and dirty way of describing this. And as I say, I need to get it to where I've got it written down to where people can look at diagrams and get an idea of the pinouts of this. I don't know, unless you've got an older AS400 maybe, these Hydras, and the FRU part number for them is this 21F5093. And we see even a date there of 2005 in July the 13th day, and made in China in this instance. So these are actually, I've seen these online for even less cost by that FRU part number than the 4-port model. You could probably get one of these delivered in the United States for less than $30 USD. So that's a good overview of that. I'll go through and I'll try and do some timestamps on the video So I can go through and have that in different sections, so you can more quickly pull up that information and get back in position here. That's just a good overview of these 4-port and 8-port headers. We saw some kind of amazing prices for that 4-port, but these things are still available out there. It doesn't need to necessarily, in fact, probably if you went through and got the parts in those twin-ax ends to make your own connector, and those are available on eBay and places like that, but you probably spend a lot more money going through and making your own connector, your own Hydra, than what it costs to find one of these out there and to buy it. And I understand that it may be rougher finding these Hydras outside the United States. The 8-port Hydra has a 20-foot cable in that instance, so it's double the length of the 4-port, and of course double the number of ports, and lower cost as it is. And I don't think anybody, once I've gone through and described and where they've got a second twin-ax connection board in their 5494, is going to go out and find that 03F0386 4-port Hydra with the embossed numbers on that of 4 through 7 and buy that at nearly $1,000. Now watching this video, you're able to save that money and go out there and find a $30 to $45 USD Hydra instead and just relabel it yourself, and so you're welcome. So if you did enjoy this content, go ahead and click on that like button for the video, please. And as always, I talk about subscribing to my channel. Please subscribe to my channel if you have not done so already. Recommend it to your friends that may be interested in this sort of content. But that's all I have for now. This is IBM Museum. Thank you.